Hi everyone, welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement. This is part 4, which is the last and final part to my Commodore 64 Repairathon video series. If you haven't watched part 1, 2, and 3 yet, I recommend you do that first. I'll put a link up in the corner here to the last part, but check the video description for a link to parts 1, 2, and 3, so I recommend you watch them in order. Where we had left off in part 3, I had fixed the third machine and got that working, and then tested the fourth machine, which actually just worked out of the box. While testing the SID from the fourth and first machines, we found that the sound playback was quite screwed up, although a few people commented that it sounded like we were circuit bending the SID, which was kind of cool. But anyways, let's get back to testing the rest of the computers, and we're also going to get back to that first machine and fix it up and get it working. Alright, well anyways, let's try playing this, see if the joystick port's working. At least the keyboard seems to be working fine. By the way, this is a great arcade port of Donkey Kong. So much better than any other version. Yeah, it seems to be working fine. Oh! Okay, I suck. Alright, here we have machine number 2. This was the one that had a bad PLA, which I fixed. The SID is soldered on there, so we didn't do anything with that. And let's see how it sounds with Donkey Kong. That sounds absolutely normal. So I'm going to put a check mark on the SID, check mark on the CPU. The ROMs are obviously working. I was able to use the keyboard, so the CIAs seem to work. Kind of a noisy SID on this one, just a lot of hissing and weird noise. Joystick appears to be fine. Yes, nice. Alright, we got machine 3 here, which, yes, I love how sharp the S-video output is on these machines. It's crisp and not fuzzy at all. That's not good. That's not supposed to happen. That could be a dirty contact in the cartridge slot, though. So let's try that again. Okay, that's normal. So I just sort of reseated the cartridge. It's fine now. So this one has a bad SID. I wrote bad on it because in the diagnostics it was glitchy. But sounds okay. It's a little quiet in the bass line there. Generally that sounds totally fine though. It's a little poppy, the audio. You hear that when I'm walking? Oops. Alright, well anyways, it appears to be working fine. So it's a little poppy. This chip is definitely not perfect SID, but it's certainly workable, I suppose, at least with this particular game. Alright, time for a quick summary. So here's the number 1 machine. This is the one that has a black screen and the dead test does nothing on. So we haven't really figured out exactly what's wrong. I did steal the PLA to fix one of the other machines, and the SID was one of the bad ones, and I have a SID here that's marked bad. This is the number 2 machine, which is now working. It simply had a bad PLA, which is what got stolen from the first machine. The SID is working fine, it's soldered though, and the rest of this computer does appear to be fine, even though there's some socketed chips. Now we have the number 3 machine, and this is the one that ended up having 2 bad RAM chips, and a bad TTL logic chip is here as well. But other than that, this machine was actually fine, except actually it had a bad SID chip as well, one of the weird glitchy ones, but otherwise works fine. And then we have the number 4 machine, and this is the one that also had a very bad and screwed up sounding SID, but otherwise was working perfectly fine, at least as far as I can tell. So interesting, that's kind of cool. Didn't have to do anything on that one. So then, yeah, we have the first machine that's broken still, and I think it's time to get back to this and take a look at it. Alright, so I'm trying to troubleshoot the board number 1 here. It's giving us the black screen. One thing I wanted to check was the clock signal to the CPU, because over here is the clock generator and there are some socketed chips. A little bit of rework has been done. So pin 1 on the CPU is the clock signal, but I'm getting a nice 1.02 megahertz there, a nice perfect square wave. So I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with the clock, so that's not the problem with this machine. Alright, next let's check the reset circuit, and that's pin 40 on the CPU. So we should see a transition after turning the computer on. Yep, we see it normal. It should be high normally. When you turn the computer on, it's going to hold it low, the CPU reset, and then it goes high. That's make sure the machine's in reset while everything is sort of initializing, and then it releases, and then the execution begins on the processor. I'm checking the highest address line 15, pin 23 on the CPU, and we're definitely getting different activity here. And if I turn the machine off and on, you know, you see a little bit of a change. So we know that the processor is at least trying to execute right now. It's trying to run. Check the different address lines. Yeah, we're like seeing activity here. So that's a good sign. If you know things aren't looking good on here, then we know there's some kind of a problem. 7, 8, 9, 10. These are the different address lines. See, when I turn it off and on, it sort of changes. I know the CPU is good, so we don't have a problem there. Let's check the IRQ pin on the CPU. That's looking fine. And the ready pin, non-maskable interrupt number 4. So definitely the problem, from what I can tell, is probably going to be one of the logic chips. All the address and data lines appear fine on this thing. And if we put the dead test cartridge in, it doesn't require the ROM chips for operation. So it really feels like some of these TTL logic chips may be to blame. Well, I've been poking around at this and looking at the schematics for this revision of board. And so far I'm not really seeing anything wrong. Like, to recap, the PLA is good because we tested, the CPU is good, and with the dead test in, these onboard ROMs are definitely being deselected. I can see activity on the address and the data lines, so I'm kind of stuck. I think I'm going to start taking off a couple of the relevant logic chips. Some of them, like there's a 555 over here, and a few things don't necessarily relate to the running of the computer like it does some of the other functions, like the joysticks and things. So I'm going to leave those, but I'm going to take a couple of these off, and we're just going to put them in the tester. Yeah, I'm not good enough to be able to know exactly how this thing should work, to be able to like zero in on a particular problem. To cut my losses and not work on this forever, I'm just going to start pulling some chips off. Alright, so I've removed some of these chips here. They're just sitting kind of in the spot where they originally came from. The board is cooling off. So a few have been taken off. Let's test these. In fact, actually this one here is a analog switch type chip, or it's one of the Motorola's. It's not a 74 logic chip, so not quite sure how to test that one, but hopefully I have a spare. First up, we have a 74 LS257 that comes from U13. Let's test this. Testing. Okay, that one is good. Next up, we have the other one. This is from U25. That's good as well. Okay, now we have 74 LS373. This is U26. I think this is like a bus transceiver or something. That tests good. Alright, next we have a U15, which is 74 LS139. Let's test that. That tests good. And all that leaves us with is this Motorola chip, which I can't easily test with this. Okay, some more chips have been removed. Here's one. This is U8 and U27, and I think this was U14 right there. So let's start by testing this one, which is U8 7406. 7406, that tests normal. Okay, we have a 74 258. That had an error, but pins are a little bent up, so I'm just gonna kind of straighten these out. 74 LS258. Close that down on there. Test. Huh, device unavailable or error. Oh, you know what? Look, the cable came out. Make sure you check your USB cables. Okay, that tests normal. Okay, and the last logic chip is a 7408. Well, the camera crashed again, but all the 74 logic chips on here tested normally, so all that's left is another Motorola analog switch. This is a 556. That's the static RAM, and that's it. So I am at a loss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull those chips out, because obviously, I mean, if the RAM is bad, but I check the address lines and the data lines and those are all looking good, then those should test wrong with the dead test cartridge, but it's not. So all I can think is well, these are getting disabled. So I don't even know. I mean, these are the things that these two chips are active while testing. So maybe that's the problem. I don't know what else. I mean, we know these chips are all fine. I don't think any of this stuff will really matter. It's generating a good clock, and that's what this is doing. So yeah, this is a real mystery. I mean, yeah. Well, I took off the two CIAs, so they're sitting here. I'm just letting them cool down a little bit, and I'll test them in the ZIF machine. I guess I'm gonna have to put sockets back in for this, or I don't know. I mean, if I can't find a bad chip on this thing, then I have no idea what's wrong. At least when I took these out, none of the traces, these both had been replaced already, and none of the traces underneath are damaged, so that's good. I guess I'm going to take these two out as well. Maybe I'll take the video RAM out, the color RAM too. So I'll take this out. So essentially this machine will be basically socketed, well, except for the RAM. But wow, what a frustrating experience this has been. So these are the two CIAs from the machine, number one machine that is black screen. I thought maybe these were causing a problem, but both of these work fine in my test machine. So these are not the problem. So here's a little pile of chips of all things that test perfectly and work, and yet we still have a machine that doesn't even run dead test. It's pretty darn frustrating. All right, trying to think about what to do with this board, and the thing that's really getting me is I swear I fixed one of these before, these Rev A boards, and it was one of the ROM chips that was bad, and it was actually keeping the computer from working at all, even when the dead test was in. But I thought I remember with that one, the chip was really hot. So I kind of wish I had just started with the ROM chips, because where I was before, now I'm gonna have to repopulate all these logic chips before I can, if I could test that theory. But I'm gonna yank these two ROM chips out. This board's gonna end up being full of sockets, so I'm gonna yank these out now and we'll see where that goes. Okay, so the board's looking pretty bare. ROMs are out, CIAs are out, logic chips are out. So let me test these ROMs in my board. Okay, so I know, okay, 10226. Let's take mine out, pop this one in. It's always difficult to insert these chips after you've desoldered them, because the pins are a little mangled. There's just not a lot of leeway. There we go. Okay, so 10226 is in, power, and that's connected. Okay, well, clearly that's working. So check mark on the ROM. Okay, and we have the kernel ROM, which is 901227. This is a -01 because it's of course one of the early kernels. This machine has a -03 in it. That is in backwards. Good thing I noticed. Let's try that again. There we go. Incorrectly. Power. Look at that. Black screen with the kernel ROM. Let's just try the dead test cartridge. Man, if I did all that chip removing for literally a dead kernel ROM, that sucks. That really sucks. X that out. Yeah, and I'm telling you, this is exactly what I remember from that other board. I think it was the kernel ROM too. And the dead test even though that disables the ROMs, wasn't working. And look, same problem. Oh, can't believe I desoldered this pile of chips because of one bad kernel ROM. But it doesn't even get warm. That's the thing. It's the same temperature as these other chips. But as you see there, bad kernel. Let me put the original one back in. The check mark on it. The original one's not that easy to get back in either. Okay, original is back in. Dead test cartridge is in there, so it's not gonna come up immediately. But this damn chip, there it is, came up. Look at that. Jerk! What a jerk, this chip! Ah! Look at this pile of chips I took off and I didn't need to. Alright, well, it's time to repopulate this with sockets. So I have two 40 pins in here now. They're not soldered yet. But I'm going to look through my stash and I'm going to put sockets in all of these that I have since removed. Okay, a sea of sockets. Nothing is actually soldered in, except for the ones that were there before. These are just sitting in, but I went through all my stash and tried to find ones I could fit. This long one here is actually made up of two. This is a 6-pin on the top here, and it's really the only way I could make it fit. So when you do that, just make sure you align the sockets properly. So, okay, time to solder everything on. Okay, so this is all soldered. All of the sockets are on. Looks good on the back of the board. There's really no damage, and that bodge, by the way, was there before I got to this board. But yeah, everything is looking good. The only thing I did is I damaged this bypass cap here, so it's probably fine without it, but I just need to attach a new one. So now it's time to sand down these chips so I can reinstall them in this board, and we can see if this thing even works. So I just get a piece of sandpaper like this, and I take the edge of the chip, and I just run it back and forth on there. It makes scratch marks in it. And I just make sure that it's nice and smooth. And I just do that on all the chips. So all the logic chips are repopulated. I'm going to leave the ROMs out, leave the CIAs out, and we're going to test with a dead test cartridge just like this. Okay, here we are. Moment of truth. Oh, it's working! Look at that! Oh, amazing. One of the issues with this early board is it has a really weak video output. I think most people were going to use this with the RF modulator. There's a little bit of a hack by Ray Carlson. There's a resistor you have to add in this metal can here that will bring this video signal up to par. Because it's very, very dim, although it looks okay right now, but it's just extremely dim. Oh, and you can see that the times are all screwed up, like 2A. And this is because I have the CIA chips removed from the motherboard. All right, all the original chips are back in, except I borrowed the kernel from the test machine. This is the bad one here, but that's the borrowed one. I plugged in a keyboard. Let's turn it on. Ah, yes, okay. Hello. Yeah, it's working. Oh, all of that work, and it just was the kernel. All right, well, let's do the video mod to fix this horrible video signal, because this is a Rev A board, and let's run it through its paces with a SID chip and some games. So this board is a very early Rev A board. And checking out Ray Carlson's website here, he has a great update on why the video is weak. He says R10 on the schematics should be 120 ohms, but on his board, he looked and it's 300 ohm. There's R10 right there. And checking my phone, sure enough, that comes out as 300 ohms as well. And on a previous Rev A board I worked on, that was the same problem. So the solution is you just take a 220 ohm resistor and you solder it across that one, and that will become the desired 120 ohms that it should be according to the schematics. All right, let's check out before. So this is the stock kernel, and notice you can hardly read the fonts here, at least the way my monitor is through the RetroTink. Let's check out the EasyFlash. There's the EasyFlash, also looking extremely dark and horrible. So let's install the resistor, check out the after. There's the piggyback resistor on R10. All right, let's turn it on. So it looks a million times better, although there's a little bit of color fringing around the letters, and that's actually a symptom of this particular VIC-2 chip that's in this board. So I can swap that out and that gets rid of that. Let's switch over to EasyFlash, check out how that looks. So it looks better, but it's still a little dim and a little crappy with the color. Let's swap out the VIC-2 chip and put in the newer, better quality one and just see how much better that looks. Notice the color fringing around these letters here. That should go away as soon as I swap the chip. All right, let's see how this looks now. Oh yeah, look at that. No more color fringing on any of these letters. Nice solid picture. It's a little fuzzy because we're over composite, not this video, but absolutely no color fringing. Excellent. I'm just not a fan of the RF shields, and this is everything I have left after fixing all those machines. So yeah, sorry for those that think I'm crazy for not keeping this stuff, but it's just a pain in the butt. Especially this. This one is the flap that lays on top of the motherboard. This will just accelerate the heating of the motherboard and potentially the death of those chips. So this immediately gets tossed. Well, that's it for this marathon repair. It's nice to have 4 working Commodore 64s, although we have a couple with bad SID chips and we have 1 missing PLA, but otherwise these machines work well. Cases are a little rough, needs a little bit of cleaning, but hey, not bad considering 3 out of 4 of these were totally not working at all when I got them. A shout out to Geek with Social Skills who donated these computers to me. Check out his channel, there'll be a link in the description below. I'd love to hear your comments and suggestions in the comment section below, and of course you can subscribe for more videos. I'd appreciate a thumbs up if you like this. If you hated it, you know what to do. Give me a thumbs down, and thank you for watching. Goodbye.